And a very good morning to you. You're welcome along to Tuesday morning's OTBAM, and we'd just like to, on behalf of everybody here at OTB, formally extend our congratulations to Minister Shane Ross on winning silver at the World Cup on behalf of the Irish hockey team.
Congratulations, Shane. It's all on you. From me to you, well done. We're very proud of you. You are the true hero of our nation.
And he did, of course, manage to steal the thunder of the returning hockey team at the airport when he made this announcement. Have a look.
In response to what you've done, and others, but in particular because of the timing of what you've done, I want to say that I've decided that we will give an extra 1.5 million for Olympic and World Champion preparation, and hockey will enjoy a significant share of that particular
seriously, a significant share. I haven't a clue what that is for World Cup and for World Champion and Olympic preparation. If you're a World Champion, you can access this fund. That man's a joke at this stage. Like, that is right up there with Charlie Haughey appearing on the Champs-Élysées when Stephen Roche won the Tour de France in 1987. But it's also in keeping with the consistent nonsense that has come from his office during his time involved with sport. And actually, one of the worst things that's happened to sport is the fact that he's been involved in the Department of Sport, I would say, in Irish sport over the last 3 decades. Like, that's even going back to when Fianna Fáil treated it as their own personal slush fund when they invented the Capital Sports Programme. Like, insanity. What does it even mean? Nathan had a great tweet last night going, is this the same 1.5 million that was promised last week? There you go. Is this the 1.5 million that Shane Ross has suddenly found new money? Or is the same 1.5 million that was announced for high performance programmes ahead of the 2020 that was announced in the National Sports Policy? Bad reading there. Turns out I need glasses. That's a sobering thought of a Tuesday morning after a bank holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's true. It's actually a great shout by Nathan, because I think that National Sports Policy went a little bit under the radar because obviously we were all watching what was going on in London. We were watching some incredible GAA at the tail end of the World Cup. There was a lot of journalists off work and stuff like that. It did kind of float under the radar to a certain extent, and not everybody had poured through every detail except for Nathan clearly there, and it's a great shout. That must be the same money. It has to be. I do give a bit more credit to Haughey though. Like, at least Haughey didn't stand up and say, this is a great opportunity for me to give you more. Haughey was just there to celebrate.
No, he did a full lap of honour with the Ireland football team.
Exactly. He was it was purely celebratory, whereas Shane Ross was like, not only am I celebrating with you, I'm going to be a martyr. I'm not celebrating, I'm doing the right thing for all of our country.
Not having it. Also, like, Shane Ross just deciding, I have decided that I'm going to give my money, as opposed to like the taxpayers' money that the taxpayer has put together through the sweat of their brow.
Yeah, like Shane Ross was watching the penalty shootout win against Spain on Saturday, and he picked up his piggy bank, smashed it off the floor, and was like, all that money on the ground is going to Irish hockey.
That's yours now. It's in cash.
In cold hard cash, 1.5. It was interesting there. When I was watching that, I was like, 1.5 million for hockey, that's a great sum. And then he was like, some of the 1.5 million will go to hockey.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much, maybe 50 grand.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a shambles, and it was a really bad end to what was an amazing achievement. For the hockey team to be able to unify the country behind hockey is pretty impressive.
It is. It's a huge achievement. Like, it's just heroes for minority sport, left, right, and centre. When you look at everybody behind Shane Ross there in those pictures, it was actually an amazing scene in Scott's Beer Garden in Killarney on Saturday evening as Ole 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 rings around at whatever 4:00 in the afternoon after Ireland win a penalty shootout in hockey. It really did kind of capture the imagination of everybody in the country, like chatting to family members of mine, like planning trips around when to get into town for the game. It's like, you got to be in for 2:00, you got to be in for the hockey and stuff like that. It was certainly very novel. I can't remember anything like that in any minority sport before, and I don't think it's fair to call it a minority sport. I think it's been referred to like that too much. It's just sport, and it was just beautiful sport that we witnessed for the last couple of weeks, and it was great scenes.
The Kerry footballers were clearly watching it as well and got a bit carried away, certainly in that first half when Kildare were killing them until they had one of the most ridiculous sendings off that I've seen since the last ridiculous Kildare sending off.
It was a pretty ridiculous sending off, to be fair. I would wonder...
Kildare were killing Kerry at that stage in a game that So what Kildare were supposed to put up the performance that Roscommon put up against Dublin, like, oh look, we'll there'll be no tackling here, there'll be no intensity to this game. Instead, they were really good in a match that Kerry needed to win, because they didn't know at that stage that Galway were going to throw the game against Monaghan.
Yeah, I do think Kerry would have won the game by the required amount, 5 points plus.
I'm not sure.
It certainly wouldn't have been 12, wouldn't have been double figures. I think it just...
But they were like 5 points down and not playing well. 6 points
down. It punctured their spirit a lot earlier than it was going to get punctured. It was going to happen eventually.
That and the own goal. That didn't help.
The own goal didn't help either, to be fair. The black card as well. I didn't quite get a good look at the black card afterwards.
It was like they were getting a Clifford and he just went and pulled him to the ground. It's the type of thing that, if you're most other counties you don't get pinged for, but Kildare get pinged for it.
Yeah.
The white jersey's not good camouflage, lads.
No, it's not.
We should get a camo jersey as our away jersey and just wear it all the time.
That is your away jersey. The kind of crappy green colour. It's like an off green, kind of a mix between these two colours. That's the Kildare away jersey.
I mean like a proper camouflage jersey so you can't see nothing.
Well,
not even the numbers. Who was that? I don't know. I can't see the number.
It
looks like an 8. They all look like an 8.
Just look, if you make a black card foul, you just lie on the ground in a prone position and the referee can't see you.
Exactly, yeah.
This team's already down to 14 men.
Exactly. If you can't see me, you can't black card me. Right. What's coming up on the show? We're going to take you through the sports pages. We'll talk hockey. We have reaction from the camp in the immediate aftermath of the game. Obviously, when you lose a final like that, it's a particularly one-sided game. There's a little bit of the immediate aftermath is, I can't believe we just got hammered. But actually, this is a massive celebration. They all won silver medals in the World Championships. So we'll talk hurling. Matthew Hanlon's going to join us to help us to preview the All-Ireland hurling final and to reflect on the hurling at the weekend, which was pretty sensational as well. We have Daniel Harris talking to us about the José gloom and football. Pat McEnaney is going to talk to us about the atmosphere around Monaghan as they have made it through to an All-Ireland semi-final, and then Enda McGinley is going to talk to us about how happy Tyrone are about the fact that they're through to the semi-final and that they're going to be facing a very familiar foe in Monaghan. There were loads of tweets about Billy Brennan's barn after the Monaghan game, and then I was thinking as news comes through that somebody is scratching the record in Billy Brennan's barn, and the mad out of it's the next day are slowly being told it's Tyrone in the semi-final, lads. And suddenly the buzz gets wrecked.
The buzz would have been wrecked even if it was Dublin. Like, let's just appreciate the buzz that it is this week. And I can see there being sort of a John Kiley / Shane Dowling moment for this Monaghan team in a couple of years' time, because I don't think this is no matter what happens this weekend, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, it's not the end of this Monaghan team. They will get to another All-Ireland football semi-final again, I do suspect, because there's going to be no retirements this year, and that in next year or the year after, Malachy O'Rourke or Conor McManus will come out after winning an All-Ireland quarter-final and say, listen lads, remember the buzz we had in 2018, let's not let that happen ever again. Now they'll enjoy this week, the fans will enjoy this week, the county will go into an absolute rapture, but there is this growing sense that Tyrone have their number, particularly in Croke Park, particularly in games that really matter when it's true knockout. And we saw that Tyrone still have that capability of just being cold and ruthless like they were in Ballybuffet on Sunday. So they would have the upper hand. But Dublin are close into this All-Ireland year. There's no question about that. It's going to be their easiest All-Ireland yet. I've said it before on the show. Nobody's going to stop them. So it's either get more humiliated or get to a certain extent humiliated by Dublin or put up a fight against Tyrone, which they will do. It will be a game.
Dublin are keeping teams in matches. Let's come back to that a little bit later on because we've got to get you through the newspapers right now.
OTBAM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie. Championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
So Phil Healy is on the back of the Irish Independent this morning. That is her making her way through at the European Championships. She's going to bid for a place in the 100-metre final at the semi-final this evening, and that's in Berlin. She says there's more there. 200 grand bid for 16-year-old stopper, but only after leaving cert. This is the Rovers goalkeeper, Gavin Bazunu, who is apparently on the verge of a move to Spurs, but he's going to have to sit his leaving cert first. And Kerry chairman adamant they can't rush the appointment of Fitzmaurice successor. Tim Murphy, the Kerry GAA chairman, has said that this is the biggest decision of his career and will ultimately mark his legacy down. Who follows Eamon Fitzmaurice in the hot seat? Tim Murphy was being mentioned as a possibility, the former goalkeeper, on Terrace Talk last night. What are your little sparrows telling you?
Well, Diarmuid Murphy would be a good appointment. It's very hard to tell with any of these appointments who will be good and who will be bad, because the only person in the mix who's really been at the top level of management at underage level in the county and who's in the mix are Jack O'Connor and Peter Keane. Now, with the Peter Keane appointment, you've obviously got to wait till Kerry's minor campaign plays out. Obviously, Jack O'Connor's had a couple of weeks to mull over the under-20 campaign. And in a way, the fact that Jack O'Connor took over the under-20s and stayed on with them this year has almost damaged his case, because if Kerry fans are upset with the way Eamon Fitzmaurice got some decisions wrong over the last couple of years, well, you can imagine what those same fans were saying when they got cleaned out of midfield against Galway in the under-21 semi-final last year and continued to kick the ball long, and the way they got bullied around the park by Kildare in this year's All-Ireland semi-final. Now, the thing is, Jack O'Connor...
They're All-Ireland champions, though, like one of the greatest under-20 teams we've ever seen.
Well, you know, they're...
literally the greatest under-20 team that there's ever been.
Well, that is a good point, and one of the great players you would suspect in Jimmy Hyland. But there is a point, and you know, it comes back to Fitzmaurice as well, that you know, O'Connor cruised through earlier parts of the championship over the last couple of years, took a great minor team and solidified their place as an up-and-coming team, a generation of potential superstars. And he won't get the credit because he got things wrong in 2 All-Ireland semi-finals. And if he wasn't in those positions, he might be the front runner for the job. Now, Peter Keane seems to be the man who's best placed within that dynamic of managing underage teams. The other talk over the last couple of days has been Pat O'Shea potentially being reinstated as Kerry manager, which would really split opinion in the county. But he's certainly done a great job with Dr. Crokes, bringing them to the promised land once again. Last year, of course, this year was quite disappointing against Nemo Rangers and all that. So there's a number of different ones, but it seems that Tomás O'Shea and former Kerry players are going to give the support to the likes of Diarmuid O'Sullivan, former teammates of theirs, rather than Diarmuid Murphy, rather than the likes of a Jack O'Connor or a Pat O'Shea or a Peter Keane,
who they all played under, which is interesting.
Well, not Peter Keane, but yeah.
Tyrone building up formidable head of steam is the headline on Jim McGuinness' piece today. He's asking the question: they've no marquee forward, they've no marquee free taker. Can they win All Ireland? He has his doubts. No doubt that'll be pinned on the dressing room and dressing room wall. And is it? What's their training centre called? Garvaghey. Mannion happy to keep clocking up the miles for Galway. This is Pádraig Mannion. It's just that Galway performance, really. Like, there's a zombie quality to that in an All-Ireland semi-final that the great Kilkenny team had, that you don't give any credit to until after they win the All-Ireland. You go, oh, okay, that's when they won the All-Ireland. You know, I'd be worried if I was Limerick. Like, how do you kill that team? You can't kill that team.
The zombie-like quality was there in the first day to a certain extent against Clare, maybe in the game against Kilkenny the second day in the replay in Thurles. But to say it was there on Sunday, like, come on, it was Clare pucking that game away. There's no two ways about it. There is a flaw in this Galway team that they keep letting early leads slip. It's not a flaw in their character, Joe Canning. It's a flaw maybe in great teams, allowing great teams to come back into games because you're coming up against great teams. It is a great hurling championship. I don't know where this idea of this criticism of Galway's character was, but there is like cold hard evidence in front of us that shows us that Galway have let 3 big leads slip early in games, and it is because they go gung-ho early in games, teams figure them out, then it's up to the Galway management to figure them out, and they've done so successfully over the last few games, except for the fact that on Sunday the single biggest factor in Clare's defeat was their accuracy. There's no getting away from that. Of course there's a zombie-like nature to Galway, but to say that the zombie-like nature was the reason why they won on Sunday just isn't true.
Andy McEntee says the Super 8s are not fair. Of course, Andy McEntee's Meath were a point up against Tyrone, and all they had to do was tactically foul. He's basically saying, would the Dubs have done what we did, or would the Dubs have just wrestled everybody to the ground? That's a Dublin team, by the way, who have 15 men behind the ball quite regularly and who are not a team of swashbucklers. It's a wide-ranging interview that he's done with LMFM, and he says the Super 8s aren't fair. They've played 2 games in the Championship. Tyrone have now played 8 or 9 since then, including that. And it's like, well, which of these 2 teams is progressing? Is it us who actually needs to progress, or is it Tyrone who, you know, are a Division 1 team and who had all the advantages down through the years? And it's completely right. Like, you see people kind of saying that the problem with the Super 8s is that it's not knockout from quarter-final stage on, which all great competitions are. And, I mean, I like, the problem is that the whole structure makes absolutely no sense. The provincial championships are a complete anachronism, and having everybody able to take part in the Sam Maguire doesn't actually make sense. Like, I know everybody who plays in those teams. Like Michael Quinlivan's in here saying, I want to play, even if it's only one game, I want my opportunity to play for Sam Maguire. And I understand that, but it doesn't make sense.
No, poor old me, they've got mentioned a couple of times over the course of the weekend. Like Sean Kavanagh mentioned them in the Sunday game a couple of times, and they seem to be like the standard bearer now for this Tyrone team, as in Tyrone could go all the way, they could push Dublin close in an All-Ireland final, and Andy McEnaney is looking around at his dressing room in the winter saying, well, listen, we came close to Tyrone, we came close to Dublin. It's one of these weird anomalies that we often see in the GAA summer, not on the level though of some of the results we saw in the Ulster Championship, like the Fermanagh win, and I know I've mentioned this tens of times, dozens of times on this show, but that Fermanagh win against Monaghan is one of the craziest things we've seen in sport. Like, how the hell did that happen? Still scratching my head. Monaghan gone on to be the story of the summer, 3 guaranteed All-Stars. They beat a team of 3 guaranteed All-Stars and nobody knows really how they did it. It's so strange. Meath going close to Tyrone, is it an anomaly? Well, we'll see what they do next year. But, you know, with the likes of Jimmy Hyland and those Lillywhites coming as well, there could be a Leinster Championship on offer in the next 5 years. Who would have thunk it?
Okay, so moving on, Poison Pen, the Irish Examiner front page. So just very briefly, Tommy Conlon, it's inevitable. Why are we waiting for Dublin coronation? Can anybody stop Dublin? In a word, no. He's basically agreeing with you that it's going to be the easiest All-Ireland win that Dublin have as they hit 5 or 6. So how county fanatics have crossed the line in GAA. This is the lead in the Examiner this morning. Just abuse from Eoin, often most hurtful. This is Michael Moynihan's piece. Maybe Paulie wasn't all wrong back then.
Yeah.
The roughest type of fucking animals.
Yeah, well, like it's very hard to make a case against what Paulie said in light of what's come out over the last couple of days. It's kind of the volume with which he talks about Fitzmaurice, that he does have, a basket full of anonymous letters, which is hard to hear about, to be honest. Like, just, I am always of the belief that it is a very vocal minority that kind of do this sort of thing, and ultimately the vocal minority is the thing that gets heard. Like, I do remember after the league game in Tralee against Galway earlier in the year, there was one fella who, at the end of the game, who kind of rushed to the front of the terrace where which is where dugouts are in Tralee, and called Eamon Fitzmaurice everything under the sun, saying, you're useless, you need to get out, you haven't a clue. And at that point, a good 7 or 8 Kerry fans kind of made their way to that fan and gave him a piece of their mind, saying, what are you doing? I mean, like, it's the league. Would you relax? Give the man a bit of time. What are you, like, how dare you say that sort of stuff? I don't want to repeat what this fella said, but in essence, the Kerry fans were saying to him, how dare you say to that man?
So they are policing it, in fairness to them.
Yes. Yeah. But ultimately, how do you police that? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that particular individual was one of the people who was sending an anonymous letter to Eamon Fitzmaurice's house. Ultimately, there is a direct pathway to these people who are volunteers in the GAA, and that's something that people need to be really bloody careful of, because it's got an impact beyond the individual you're sending the letter to. Like imagine the impact that it has on Eamon Fitzmaurice's family and stuff
grim.
like that. It is grim.
Yeah, Anthony Daly is talking about when he was the Clare manager, there was similar stuff going on from the Clare fans. And you're like,
but in fairness to Dalo there, like, he was on an Examiner podcast that Michael Moynihan cites in his piece there. He says that, like, a fella from Mayo gave him a lot of abuse, and Dalo picked up the phone and said, if you ever send me a letter again, I'll sort you out, because it was particularly personal abuse. But Dalo also points out that there was a fellow who used to call him and give out to him, but it was about what he did on the pitch. It wasn't personal, he disagreed with what he did. And Dalo would give him the time of day, and you get the sense that Fitzmaurice is that type of person as well. Very reasonable man, very easy to deal with. Everybody in the media would say that he does listen to what people think. He is receptive to other ideas that people might have had. It's just the personalised stuff, which I can only imagine would have been carried in those anonymous letters, which is the real burden here.
One last quick one from me, the Racing Post. Latrobe could face Winks after big York assignment, so possibility that Winks could meet the Irish Derby hero at Mooney Valley in October, after Latrobe was yesterday entered for the Cox Plate, and the Joseph O'Brien trained colt has an equally tasty target at York. So it's a bit away. Oh, sorry, one more from me. The Irish News, back page of this is Tyrone subs Super Hart. So Mickey Hart acknowledging that the strength and depth of the two sides was the difference at the weekend as they streaked home on that one. So,
just before we get on to the Irish Daily Mail, breaking news this morning about Arsenal's Stan Kroenke has made an offer to buy all of the club. So he's a majority shareholder, 67% of Arsenal he owns at the moment. Alisher Usmanov, the Russian billionaire, owns the rest of the club. But Usmanov has agreed to sell his 30% stake in the club. The buyout announcement was made to the London Stock Exchange just this morning. So that'll bring the valuation of the club to £1.8 billion, which is $2.3 billion, which is at the current valuation. We're just looking at the Forbes list this morning, the latest valuation of Arsenal on the richest clubs in the world list, which leaves them at 6th, just behind Manchester City. So their valuation wouldn't change too much, if anything, really. So no big impact on that element of things. It's just about what Kroenke's plans are. There's been varying kind of viewpoints from Arsenal fans, just looking on Twitter this morning.
Yeah, so there's an outspoken critic of Kroenke and the Kroenke regime saying this is a disaster for Arsenal fans. Just explain what that point was there.
Like Tim Payton, who a lot of people will be familiar with on Twitter, just one of the points that, like on a very elementary basis, that he pointed out this morning was that Kroenke kind of embodies the businessman who's looking for a profit in sports, which is often a brush which is used to tar American sports, where it's like billionaire owner of NFL or NBA team looks to get even richer via their sports team, looks to use their sports team as a vehicle. And I don't think we kind of appreciate this. The way the finances and the revenues have gone in the Premier League, that is actually a realistic potential now in the Premier League. And just because Stan Kroenke potentially sees profitability in Arsenal Football Club doesn't mean that he doesn't have the best interests of Arsenal Football Club at heart. Of course, it is a little bit unique to see a man who potentially might be open to admitting that, listen, I want to increase my own personal finances here via Arsenal Football Club as a vehicle, but ultimately he will need Arsenal to succeed for that to happen. So it's kind of a win-win-win for me, the way I see it. And I don't know, like they've tapped into a huge market in the US already. Is there more to be tapped into there with his own connections? I'm not so sure. I'm not sure what he can do on that level. But ultimately, not having two big billionaires fighting for the power and the financial control of this football club is, and I realise I said the word football club as many times as Kenny Cunningham in the last couple of minutes, is probably a good thing. Not having a tug of war over who runs the show can only be a positive thing. Try it out for a while. Have one powerful man running the show at Arsenal. They've tried many things in the past and they failed.
It's always interesting, I think, to look at what the American owners do with their American teams. And kind of see there's a pattern of behaviour there. Like, you know, you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what the Glazers did there, and you look at what they did with Man United. They definitely take stuff from one market and move it to the other. Kroenke took the St. Louis Rams and moved them to LA. So if you're from St. Louis and you're a Rams fan, then you think he's an absolute scumbag because he's moved your team away from the city. If you are an LA Rams fan, you think he's an absolute legend because he's brought the club to LA and he has absolutely splashed the cash. They're going to have this amazing new stadium built there, and he's done a sweetheart deal, and ultimately he did end up having to put up a lot of his own money, but the value of owning the biggest and best team in LA, as they will be, is going to be huge. So he has completely enriched himself, but he's done that by signing the best players, by getting the best young coach, by making them one of the most exciting teams to watch. Like with the ownership, and that's in one season they've managed to turn that around. So I would suspect that while he may also want to make money from Arsenal, he's not going to do that by playing crappy football and having a half-empty stadium. Do the Man City fans ultimately care about the origins of the money that has made Manchester City able to afford Pep Guardiola? Ultimately, football fans are unbelievably fickle when it comes to this stuff. A small coterie of Manchester United fans hived away from Manchester United when the Glazers came in and set up FC United, and they still go there and that club still exists, and I completely understand their adherence to grassroots football and why they did that. But ultimately, most Manchester United fans will remember the Glazers for putting together the team that had Rooney and Ronaldo and Rio Ferdinand and Alex Ferguson, never once giving out about the Glazers, never once publicly going against the Glazers. And you know, they're like, well, if it was good enough for Ferguson, it was good enough for them. The Glazers took out hundreds of millions from Manchester United over the time that they've been the owners of the club. So football fans ultimately, I suspect, don't care about this stuff if the team is performing well and if it's the players' wages are paid.
That's it. Like from a purely franchise point of view, the current iteration of the Rams is their best iteration since the Miracle on Turf. Like he's made them the most successful that any young St. Louis fans will ever remember, and any of the new Los Angeles fans will remember for quite some time. If that happens with Arsenal, then Arsenal fans are not going to be complaining, no question. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is "You cowards, Kerry Supremo blasts faceless hate mail trolls." That's Tim Murphy. He's speaking to Micheál Clifford here on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail, hitting out at some of these faceless critics, as I say, a cohort of faceless people, he calls them, sending hate mail to the likes of Eoin Fitzmaurice. You've also got "All hail the homecoming heroes." That's James Murray's story there, as Ireland's hockey team take to the stage on Dame Street yesterday. The back page of the Herald this morning focuses on the Dubs' double threat, Costello and Flynn pushing for a semi-start, says Dubs legend Duff. That is, Cormac Costello, Paul Flynn, but brilliant, of course, at the weekend. Kieran Duff speaking to Frank Roach here on the back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning. The back page of the Mirror then focuses on transfer news. £40 million, Toby or not Toby? United make bid for £40 million. Toby or not Toby is how I meant to phrase that. United make bid for Spurs ace, but won't break bank. £40 million, that seems like a fairly low ceiling for Toby Alderweireld, given transfer deadline day is Thursday. You're pushing that to 50 or 60 if you want to get him before then, I reckon.
There's a clause in the contract. Apparently the Christmas transfer window is going to be 26 million.
That'd be a disaster from a Spurs point of view.
That's why they'll take 40 now.
Yeah, considering the way Daniel Levy operates, considering the way the club has always operated, it is, I don't want to call them a selling club, but they like to make a bit of a profit.
Yeah.
So that would be a disaster to let them go for £26 million. So 40 might actually swing at them with that information. I think they might be able to swindle 50 out of them, though, before the end of the week. Blues put in, Chelsea chasing €28 million Jack to replace Courtois. So they're going after Jack Butland, Thibaut Courtois on the way back to Madrid, if you're to believe reports. He's gone AWOL from the Chelsea training ground. He was obviously back late from the World Cup. Belgium got to the third place playoff, so he was there till the very last weekend. But he should be back by now, and he's not. He's got 2 kids over in Madrid. Real Madrid are interested. The thing is, like, Chelsea have to make a decision on this week. The La Liga transfer window doesn't close till another 3 weeks after the Premier League window closes, so it's a bit of a disaster if we get to the end of the week, Chelsea haven't signed a replacement, and then 1 week later Real Madrid has snapped up Thibaut Courtois. Rob Green suddenly becomes your second choice keeper. Back page of the Sun is Rebel, agent in talks over Pogba move, revolt, Toon Stars strike over bonus row, and mutiny, AWOL Courtois tries to force move. It has been like a rather exhilarating couple of weeks in sort of the behind the scenes element of the Premier League, because it's all been squashed into a 2 or 3 week period given the transfer window closes on Thursday. And it's always great to have Mike Ashley around. If you're stuck for a story, just stick him up in like a sparkling white shirt in the back of your tabloid newspaper, and he'll be there to give you some sort of story. Apparently Newcastle players have boycotted a club shoot. Now, this is the shoot where you walk up to the Sky Sports camera in a fancy manner and, I don't know, fold your arms, or you dab, or you do a Fortnite celebration. And they've really shown Mike Ashley who's boss by not dabbing for the Sky Sports cameras. So
Sky Sports and BT, so they didn't do it for either of them.
Oh, BT have got those animations this year as well.
They do, yeah.
I thought Sky Sports would have some sort of creative control and all of that. Some UK back pages. There's a great interview here this morning with Carl Akime, the Wolves goalkeeper. So some people have a cancer that is terminal. I was given a chance, and I'm grateful to have that. Stuart James interview on page 40 there this morning. It's online if you want to check that out. Courtois snubs Sarri Summit in bid to force Madrid move. Keeper plays hardball. That's a Thibaut Courtois story. It seems to be the transfer story at the moment. Can we bring you the Telegraph this morning? Here we go. It is second footballer killed by head trauma. It's another devastating story from the fallout, really, and kind of an area of science that we are only really starting to fully understand when it comes to heading the ball, and footballers with the legacy of heading the ball and the trauma that causes. So tragic news there, and a big countdown to the Premier League season. It continues everywhere. It starts on Friday.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk a little bit about the hockey team now. Graham Shaw was doing loads of post-event interviews yesterday, and obviously a question that keeps coming up is the notion of funding and how important funding is for the sport. He says that funding is important, but it shouldn't really all just be about funding. Have a look. Here he is talking to Stephen Doyle.
Do you think you can close that gap with, I suppose, the resources that you have and the time that you have together?
It's difficult. It is a very difficult challenge. The teams we play against spend 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week training together. We would meet up maybe once a week or once every 2 to 3 weeks. So it's a difficult challenge, and we definitely need to address that when we get home. We need to somehow provide the resources and look at how we can get these girls to spend more time together and train together a little bit more regularly. So can we close the gap on a country like Netherlands? Not a chance with the resources we are. Can we close the gap on other nations? Yes, we can. But I definitely think now the sport needs to change. We definitely need to look and see how we can and clever. You know, we need to be quite creative in how we can do this. But I'm not saying we need millions of investment. That's not what we need, because we're after achieving a silver medal without it. It's not about money necessarily. It's about just being creative, looking at different opportunities where maybe we can allow these girls to train a little bit more full time.
What else do you need really? What assistance can you get realistically that can help this team progress?
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities, maybe even for where girls can maybe get picked up by maybe companies and they can support them a little bit as well. I mean, we've got very, very intelligent women here that are very driven and motivated and very dedicated girls. So, you know, looking at maybe companies getting involved in their industry, where maybe they can work a little bit and then train a little bit more full time. That's an idea that we have, is a bit of creative idea. I think the government definitely needs to look at maybe giving us a home now. I mean, we don't have a pitch. I mean, we hired 5-6 different pitches, I think, in the build up for this tournament, and that means you're playing on different pitches week in, week out, and that's not the right preparation. The teams here, prepare on the same pitch that's being played here. We're using different types of AstroTurf in different locations around the country, and we're also paying for them. And it's a difficult one when you're trying to compete then. But I don't want this thing to be about funding, because I just think that what the girls have achieved can't be about funding. But yes, we need to put things in place for the future. There's no doubt about that.
All right, so other legendary Irish hockey goalkeeper David Fitzgerald was in studio at the weekend talking about what the sport needs to do now to keep the attention of the Irish sporting public.
In an overarching sense, it's really hard to grasp what this run for Ireland has done for the sport of hockey in this country. The visibility that it's offered, the sport in and of itself, never mind the players and individuals in this team, just can't be measured on any scale at all.
That's phenomenal. Like, we all, I'm probably similar age to a lot of those girls out there, and we all grew up, hockey's a minority sport in Ireland. The idea of you playing in a World Cup final was a distant thought, and the teams have pushed on. The men's team, the women's teams are getting further and further in competitions, and there's 2 big games you want to be in: the World Cup final, the Olympic final. The girls have got to one. I was driving in to use today, and you saw people in green jerseys walk around the streets, and you're thinking, this is only for football or rugby normally, and suddenly for a hockey match you have people. My friends of mine ringing me for tickets in London, and they don't even watch hockey, but it really captured the nation, which was amazing.
Yeah, it's, I suppose, kicking on from this point onwards, you will have a great part to play in that, because you've got a World Cup finals to play in come the end of the year. It's December, I think it is.
Yeah, end of November, December, yeah.
End of November, December in India. So in terms of trying to keep the visibility alive, I mean, that's a huge thing to go on and do. For the women's side as well, they've got the added incentive to go on and try and qualify for an Olympic Games on top of that as well, for Tokyo. 100%.
The women haven't qualified for Olympic Games in a long time, and this shows there they can compete with anyone in the world. And imagine the confidence coming out. You have a silver medal from a World Cup. The best teams in the world, you have a silver medal. You're going into your Olympic qualifications. The biggest thing, this will help their world ranking as well. The higher your ranking is, the easier it is to qualify for these tournaments. So now going into that Olympic qualification situation hopefully means a lot easier of a draw as well. But the girls will have huge confidence going into that.
Yeah, naturally enough. Let's hear from Aisha McFerrin, one of the standout players and a newly minted cult hero of Irish sport.
Aisha McFerrin, thanks very much for speaking to us. I've just watched you put your silver medal back on there. How does it feel to be a World Cup silver medalist?
I don't know. Like, I have no words right now. I'm just beyond ecstatic with the effort the girls have put in, and to walk away with a silver medal, being ranked 16 in the world, it's no words to describe.
What did you actually hope to achieve before you came to the tournament? Like, how far did you think this team could get?
I knew we could do something special. I had 100% belief in us to do something that people didn't think of us, but it was all about phases and phase management. So getting out the grid, getting the crossover, which luckily enough we skipped, and then hopefully getting to the semi-final, and we went beyond that, beyond everyone's wildest dreams. And yeah, I can't believe it.
Yeah, she was pretty amazing the whole tournament.
Yeah.
Not that I know anything about it, but like she was brilliant.
Yeah, Noelle Healy had a great tweet the other day saying that Packy Bonner wears Aisha McFerrin pyjamas, which is so on the money. She was absolutely fantastic throughout. Brilliant in a couple of penalty shootouts as well. And just an instant star is born straight away. And like eagle-eyed Adrian Barry on Friday show kind of spotted that she was wearing number 19 throughout, and the subkeeper was wearing number 1. So obviously a late promotion to having being between the goals and making that position her own. So yeah, definitely one of the stars of the tournaments, and one of the people who's going to help take this thing to the next level, because that's what's going to happen now once they have the support behind them to take the thing to the next level, because they have the personnel there, they have the players, they have the coaches, they have a support base, they have the country behind them, a little bit more cash, and they qualify for the Olympics. A little bit more cash, and they turn this thing into a starting point rather than into a series of pub quiz questions.
They got $1.5 million from Shane Ross.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
So they've got all the money.
Sorry, they have all the money in the world. Shane Ross is there. Shane Ross, the Stan Kroenke of Irish hockey.
Pretty much. We can play that video again, actually, just in case you missed it. Oh, no, I'll get to you in a second. The other thing is that up until this point, I would have said Jordan Larmour might have been our most famous hockey player. That was definitely, when you read profiles of Jordan Larmour as he made his breakthrough, like it's only this time last year that everybody started, they've got this kid, he might make a few appearances. People were saying he played hockey, I think, internationally as a youth.
Right, I didn't know that.
And that's kind of apparently where the movement that I'm equally balanced. Unless he's just like a genius sports person who also excelled at hockey because he's Jordan Larmour. But if I was the hockey people, I'd be like, oh, if you want to be the next Jordan Larmour, you should be playing hockey.
Yeah, it's a good shout. Like it's a great way. I think that should be the attitude from every sport in Ireland, no? It's like, if you want to be a successful sports person, try out everything.
Yeah.
If it's if it's hockey, if it's rugby, no matter what it is, play something, get on the pitch in some regard, or get on the hard court, whatever it may be. Like that is the great thing about this, is that it is just another kind of element of activity that can be engaged with, that has got into the mainstream. I mean, everybody knows about this now. It's not that it was like the most minority of sport that people didn't know what hockey was. People just didn't know the intricacies of it.
Here's the thunder stealing that I think is world-class thunder stealing from Shane Ross. Have a look.
In response to what you've done, and others, but in particular because of the timing of what you've done, I want to say that I've decided that we will give an extra 1.5 million for Olympic and World Champion preparation, and hockey will enjoy a significant share of that particular amount.
Yeah, people crying because they think that they're getting the support that their hard work deserves, but actually they're not. They're just praying, falling victim to a minister preying on somebody else's success to bask in their reflected glory.
Didn't Nani score a goal for Portugal a few years ago that Ronaldo almost finished into an empty net, and then Nani just kind of got there ahead and headed it at home? That's kind of like what Shane Ross did there. It's like, I am going to take your fantastic work and I'm going to finish it off.
And the goal was disallowed for offside.
Yes, that was it. Forgot about that. That is the exact version of Nani's goal in the political sense.
Yeah.
Or non-goal, so to speak. But it's just 1.5 million. Oh shit, there's cheers, some of which is going to you. It's kind of like, it's I don't know, a grandmother giving kids some money for their communion, and it's like, oh shit, no, not all of that money is for you. You've got to share that €50. It's like so many loops are being engaged there by Shane Ross, and the fact that he engaged with it in the first place, credit has to go to him.
Oh yeah, as ever, the credit always goes to Shane Ross. Right, let's move on. Hurling, what a weekend it was. Joe Canning, very angry in the aftermath. Well, not very angry, but a little bit pissed off about the fact that his team's character had been questioned in the build-up to the replay. Have a look.
We showed great character. We were only behind overall in both matches once, I think, and we didn't get a lot of respect, I think, during the week from media and such. Our character was questioned, I thought. People were saying that we didn't perform and stuff like that, but only being behind in an All-Ireland semi-final over two games in one instance just shows the character we have.
Matthew Hanlon is with us this morning. Matthew, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, lads. How's it going?
Is it possible that Joe Canning isn't actually talking about people outside the camp, that inside the camp somebody's job this week was to question the team's character, and that actually that's just how the dynamic works, that somebody in the management team is detailed during the week to go, listen, you get into them there and you just make sure that they have an axe to grind, and that's the dynamic he's talking about? Because it didn't seem like anybody else outside of the camp, certainly in the media, was saying that this Galway team lacked character.
Yeah, it may have been a motivational tactic from the Galway management. You don't really know. You can only go on what Joe has said there. But I suppose from a media and journalistic standpoint, like, not many people had written them off. Most of them had them as hot favourites going into the game. And even after, the narrative was more Galway's missed chances and Clare coming back into it, and that Galway probably should have won the match. So I don't know if it's probably something that the management probably used to get another extra few percent out of the Galway team to go, look, we need to prove these wrong, go out there and show them what character you have. And in fairness, they showed up the second day and got the job done.
We were chatting about this a little bit earlier on, and I was kind of comparing them to a zombie, that they're never dead, and that actually the great Kilkenny team had that same ability, and it was only at the end of the season you would kind of diagnose, that's the bit where they won the All-Ireland. Owen isn't convinced, though. He just thinks that Clare kind of threw that one away more than it being Galway's zombie-like qualities that got them through. What's your take?
I suppose winning an All-Ireland gives you a real self-belief within the team, and they are a confident bunch, that they know that they don't panic when it gets into a scenario where their last 5 minutes of a game, 1 point or 2 points in it. They don't panic. And the same was evident yesterday when Clare had all the momentum, hit the post, had every chance going, and they were clawing them back. They still managed to get the crucial scores at the very end and managed to stop Clare getting their attacks at the last 2 minutes. So I think it's more about game management and knowing how to win big games, and that's probably the confidence that comes with winning an All-Ireland.
Yeah.
Like, ultimately, I don't think anybody's questioned Galway's character. It doesn't necessarily have to be a character thing that people point out that you've thrown away big leads in multiple games. And now this is the third time you've seen it this summer, Matthew, where Galway have done exactly that. Ultimately, though, it's a mark of their character that they've ended up surviving on all three occasions. But there has to be something there. It might not be a mentality thing. It might not be an element of character. I wonder, is it an element of the opposition manager figuring out Galway and then Galway being reactive on the second occasion? Are they able to do that? Is their plan B able to stand up to scrutiny?
It could be. I suppose if you take the first game, for example, I think Clare sees the momentum of that game when they put Galvin back as sweeper, and then Galway were probably guilty of playing too much ball directly on him, and Galvin got on loads of breaks and set up Clare's attacks, and that really dragged them back into the game. Whereas this in the replay, Clare started with Galvin as sweeper, but Galway played the ball excellently diagonally into space away from Galvin, and he didn't get on near as many breaks. And even when he did, there was such pressure on him from Conor Whelan at centre forward that all he could do was a long aimless ball into the football. So that was how they attacked. That was something that Clare struggled with, because the long ball to John Conlon wasn't working, and Pádraig Mannion, the sweeper, was cleaning up a lot. And then you see when Clare took advantage of that, they played the ball through the middle third, used their wing backs, midfield, and wing forwards before they were
back to you just a second, Matthew. You're just having a bit of trouble with the line there.
Yeah, it's like, there does kind of need to be kind of a separation of these two things. This kind of like, we're probably reading a lot into Joe Canning's comments, and maybe you're right. Maybe it was just kind of like a technique within the camp to get them motivated for the second game. But there is a lot of it. There is like three occasions here, as we said, where this has happened. Like, it may not be a character thing, but maybe a flaw of a different kind.
Or these teams are all very evenly matched.
Yeah,
that's the other thing.
That's the thing. Like, it has been, and we talked about this last week after the two unbelievable games in Croke Park, that it just showed up this championship for what it is, an absolute barnstormer that anybody from the top 7 or 8 counties can actually have a chance of winning this thing.
Does it need an outsider to win it for it to be the greatest championship of all time?
Well,
like, if Galway win, it's the defending champions who were favourites beforehand, coming through very difficult matches, but ultimately getting it done. It's not quite as exciting in the history books as, Limerick out of nowhere.
I think when we look back in the history books, there was nothing dull about Cork and Kilkenny winning back-to-backs. I think a great team doing back-to-back and solidifying their greatness is always great for a narrative. That being said, when it comes to narrative ahead of this year's All-Ireland hurling final, nothing beats the Limerick story, and them winning a first All-Ireland final in 45 years. Like that would just be amazing. So certainly in terms of narrative, Galway winning would not be what we want from #narrative, but it's still a good story. back-to-back champions are always a good story.
And actually, the story is less relevant than the quality of the games, ultimately.
And the memories we take away from a summer like this, I can't believe I'm saying it, but I'll have hurling memories from the summer of 2018. Who'd have thought it?
Well, you won't have any football ones, will you?
Let's not go there for the time being. Let's not touch that nerve.
We'll be touching that nerve a little bit later on, and McGinley and Pat McEnaney are going to join us. We will talk football in a couple of minutes' time. We'll get back to Matthew Hanlon in just a moment, talking about the weekend's hurling action. I think probably we do read too much into what players say in the aftermath of games like this.
Yeah, like there might not have been much in it. Like, he literally said people who questioned their character this week. Maybe that's us in the media being a little bit too self-centred, saying he must be talking about us. People were saying, we're the only people that count.
I think there's a Phil Thompson character in the Galway setup whose job it is to go out there and go, and in training to go, what the hell happened is you were winning that match. Do you know? Like,
they just go down to Tuam and pull a random lunatic off the street, and it's like, get in there and shout at the players.
This was the assistant manager at Liverpool.
Well, I'm not making the comparison to Phil Thompson, but somebody there to rile them up, and it's like, you look angry enough to question the character of my team. Get in there into the pitch and shout at my players. And maybe that's what happened.
We'll give the line a go, and we'll go back to Matthew Hanlon. Talk to us a little bit then about the ebb and flow of this game, and why Galway have been allowing teams back into it.
I really think in the middle of a game, Galway were going well, right? They got up 9 points again after 20 minutes. In those first 20 minutes, Clare set up with a sweeper, got Colm Galvin back, but he didn't enjoy near as much space or wasn't afforded an easy breaking ball as he got in the first game. So that meant that Galway played long, deep ball into Johnny Glynn, which proved fruitfully. I was either winning a clean, or Conor Cooney or Niall Burke were in around and winning breaks. Or Galway managed to find a half forward who took the ball, carried the ball, engaged the sweeper, and then offload to a runner, which that's ultimately what how Galway got ahead. On Clare, on the other hand, they tried to play long, direct ball to John Conlon. It was probably due to the pressure that Galway's forwards were putting on Colm Galvin that he couldn't pick out any short passes to midfield or middle third or into space up front. Once they went long to Conlon, he didn't seem to be able to win any ball clean, and Pádraig Mannion seemed to be able to pick up every single break. So, in effect, it nearly backfired on Clare starting that way, because Mannion had more of an impact as a sweeper as Galvin did. You can see, I suppose, from the 16, 17 minute on, Galvin tried to play it more positively. There's a couple of attacks where he actually engaged as an overlapping runner, and that he managed to get the ball inside the Galway 65 and then play a better diagonal ball into space to Conlon, which they were able to get a second-hand break off him, so a ball back out to Shane O'Donnell or Podge Collins. And then during that time, they dragged out their half-forward line, so both Reedy, Tony Kelly and Podge Collins, you'll see instances in the 10 minutes before half-time where they all won breaking ball inside their own half, so that left more space to hit in Galway's half, and they played better ball diagonally into space, and Shane O'Donnell was winning more ball as well, and that's what really dragged them back into the game. And then when they came out after half-time, 6 points down in All-Ireland semi-final, they were going to throw the kitchen sink at it. So they pushed up 15-on-15, and then you can see Tuohy went way longer with puckouts. So in the first half, I think 75-80% of his puckouts went short. In the second half, it was 75-80% of his puckouts went long, because they really committed to getting on the breaks and targeted Peter Duggan, and they had men in around him to get those breaks. I think the first score after half-time was really an indication of that. Ian Galvin's point, where I think they had a string of maybe 4 to 5, 20, 15-yard passes in the middle third, waiting for the opportunity to break through, rather than pumping long direct ball into Conlon, which didn't work in the first half. And then Galvin managed to find a space to slot it over on his left.
Okay, that explains it. And so that means it's not just... they get complacent in the middle of a game. It's like there are tactical changes, the opposition improves, the opposition plays well. We are talking about really good teams here.
Yeah. In the middle of a game, it is very difficult when you're in a player, you're concentrating on the ball and the game. And it really takes a break in play to figure out, okay, the other team has made a switch here. And maybe that's where Galway line need to be a small bit quicker to identify what Clare have done to, I suppose, counteract that. Whereas the first 20 minutes, Galway had it to a T. When Clare kind of slightly altered their tactics, it seemed Galway struggled a bit more. And then the second half, Clare changed tactics altogether and pushed straight up and was an orthodox 15-on-15 game. So, but when you're in the middle of a game, it is really hard to read that. I suppose that's where the message needs to come from the line. We need to tweak things a little bit here. What worked for us in the first half isn't quite working now.
Can you see them building up a similar sort of lead against Limerick if it's 15-on-15?
I can't. I think the final is going to be a very different game because I can't see both teams. I can't see they're not going to want to play a sweeper. They're going to want to take each other on 15 on 15. And what Limerick do is quite similar to what Clare did in the second half, in that they drag out their half forward line. Their half forward line essentially plays midfield or even in their half back line. They drag to leave space for the likes of Galan inside, and I think that's what Galway are used to. So Galway would probably sit back and not allow them to be dragged out to cover that space off. But I think it's going to be a close-fought game. Limerick proved their capabilities of fighting back against Cork with 6 points down, 15 minutes to go. I think Galway would be acutely aware that if they build up a lead like they did in the game against Clare and in the replay, that they can't afford to let it slip, because that's twice they're after getting away from being in winning positions to almost being clawed back and overturned.
2 quick questions for you. The first one is, who's your hurler of the year up to this point?
I think Pádraig Mannion. I think he's been one of Galway's best players throughout the championship. I think he's really a leader at the back, and it's more the composure on the ball when he comes out. You very rarely see him give away a ball. He carries it and either gets fouled or plays a short hand pass or plays a ball into space for his forward. And time and again in the first half and the second half yesterday, when a ball needed to be won at the back, he was the man that came out with it. And I think he's been a real leader for Galway this year. For me, he's probably the front runner at the moment.
And the other one is, who do you make, ignoring the way the odds are going to go for this, who do you actually make favourites for the final?
I'm weighing this one up my head. 2 weeks versus 3 weeks in terms of preparation plays in favour of Limerick. Limerick showed the strength of their panel against Cork in the semi-final. And that Limerick team is now full of belief and full of confidence, and they've got 3 weeks to prepare for the biggest game of their lives. They're under 21 All-Ireland winners. They know this chance might not come around again. Then it comes to Galway. Is there motivation? The question is, yes, they're back in an All-Ireland final, the second year in a row. They haven't done 2 in a row since the late 80s. Can they do it again? The big question is if they can get McEnaney back into the centre of the fence, that will make a big difference to them. But I think it's 50-50 in my eyes. I'm probably going to go. I said Galway when I tipped earlier on in the year. I still think that they've got a panel and they're playing well enough to win it. But it's all about how Limerick start. If Limerick get up ahead of steam, they're going to be very difficult to stop, especially with the amount of support they have and belief they have behind them as well.
It's going to be a classic. Matthew, typically brilliant analysis. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Speak to you soon.
That's Matthew Hanlon explaining everything in a way that makes eminent sense.
Yeah, I'm a hurling aficionado now. Talking about that there, I'm going to miss John Conlon and Shane O'Donnell, the sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito of the hurling summer. They've been the little and large. It's been so good. And what was the best goal from Sunday? That is the other question that really needs to be digested before we can proceed with life. What was the best goal? They were all amazing.
The Shane O'Donnell one?
Probably edges it for me. You think about the way Colm Galvin got sold a pup by Johnny Glynn. Inadvertently, I'm not sure. Think about the way it wasn't Dahi Burke. Was it David Burke that got sold a pup by Shane O'Donnell then? There was no real dummy moment in the Peter Duggan goal, but there was the fact that ball was about to trickle out over the end line, and somehow they salvage the ball. Somehow they salvage their way into a scoring opportunity, and somehow they salvage their way into a goal-scoring opportunity and bang back at the net. So they were all brilliant goals. And it's just been the quality of some of the scoring this summer which has been outrageous. Like that Joe Canning point to put them 4 points up, 4-0 up early in the game, I think it's going to be one of the underappreciated scores of the year as well.
From way out.
Yeah, from way out on the right-hand side. It wasn't quite Peter Duggan the previous week, but it was similarly sort of out of nowhere.
Here's Donald Maloney, the Clare co-manager, speaking after their defeat.
Yeah, but look, 6 weeks ago, a post helped us out here in Thurles as well against Tipperary, right? So there's swings and roundabouts in the season. I always kind of knew that maybe that would come back at some point, right? And unfortunately, it did today, and who knows, even if that went in, Galway are such a magnificent team, they might have still come with a point to bring it into extra time. You don't know if that would have been the difference either.
Yeah. Another replay wouldn't have been some extra time, and that wouldn't have been a disaster, would it?
No, we all wanted more. It was eating into the fact where you were like, I've got to go trio screen at this point. I got to get hockey and hurling and football. So the fact that the hurling ended when it did was convenient for the fact that they only had 2 screens on me. So thank you very much for that, Galway. But the game deserved extra time. We all deserved extra. Well, no, we didn't deserve anything. We the public, deserve nothing more from this hurling summer. But I think maybe the people in Semple Stadium, the maybe Clare deserved extra time.
The miss free, I think, will probably haunt Clare over the winter.
Yeah, the Aaron Shanahan miss as well. Like, I know the Aaron Shanahan miss is less of a controller, but it's just a freak scenario, really, where it's just one of those split-second decisions. You have to hit it when you hit it, and if you get it only slightly wrong, it's going to hit off the post. If he was further out, it probably would have gone in. Obviously, if he was at a less tight of an angle, it would have
This
gone in.
is the goal.
Yeah, Aaron Shanahan hitting the post.
But also Shane O'Donnell celebrating, and then the ball trickling back out, and he's like, oh no, if I hadn't been celebrating.
I didn't see that, actually.
Oh yeah, so O'Donnell's following him in, right,
Yeah.
as all good forwards do, and sees the ball going
And then it's on the
goalways.
ground, and he's wrong-footed.
Well, it bounces back, and he's like, oh, I'm already in the air watching you go off, as opposed to just tapping it in.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
It would have been the third tap in. It was like first one saved, second one off the post, third one tapped in. Thanks very much. But he's already celebrating, and it's like, oh Jesus, and that would have won the game for them.
It's so gut-wrenching, like, because, like, you think about it, and there's more teams that are capable of winning an All-Ireland in hurling than there is in football, clearly. But by virtue of the fact you feel so close, but you feel so far away, you feel that you're as good as the All-Ireland winners, but yet you might not have made an All-Ireland semi-final. It's so unfortunate, and that's why doing back-to-back in this era of hurling will be construed as a truly great story, and it is a truly great story if Galway do it.
I know, totally. But equally, if Limerick beat them, it's like, wow, that just came from nowhere. Enda McGinley, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, man.
So I would suspect that Monaghan must be feeling that, like, you know, they've made a little bit of history for themselves, the first team in 30 years, and it's the crushing sight of Tyrone in Croke Park that awaits them. They can't be happy about that, and you guys must be absolutely thrilled that it's Monaghan.
Certainly, Tyrone would be a pretty positive place at the minute, and I'd fully agree. For Monaghan, they have achieved history, and yet whenever they've got the head up and got off that great scenes in Salt Hill, there they are, and their biggest demon or their biggest dragon lies ahead. Tyrone and Croke Park has overturned them so many times, including years just like this year where Monaghan were the better team in Ulster and Monaghan were the better team in so many ways, and yet come to Croke Park, Tyrone bossed them in lots of them games. They go back to the Sean Kavanagh tackle, but I remember that game well. Tyrone were well on top in that game. Yes, they're only 2 points up, but to me, looking at it, there was still only going to be one winner, and even McManus had got to get the goal. There was still 15 minutes left, and I would have still assumed that Tyrone would have come through the game. So Tyrone have the upper hand. The big thing for me, and there's a Tyrone, suppose, comparison. In 2003, whenever we played Kerry were our dragon, and it put us in a psychological, such a special place that we rose to a performance level that we'd never hit before then. And that is the carrot dangling there for Monaghan. And if, with the positivity that they've got through the Super 8s, and with that whole county now behind them in such a brilliant way, they might just fall into that special zone. And if they do that, then they can achieve two histories in the 1 year.
Tell a little bit, let's focus on Tyrone before we go back to what you expect from Monaghan. Where did this quality of performance come from? At what point over the season did you think that actually Tyrone were capable of putting together that second half that they put together?
And it was really the second half of the second half. This year, like, Mickey has done a lot of management over his years, but he has probably worked harder this year at trying to work this team. In the National League, he was consistently trying to tweak the forward line, and I know from chatting to some of the players that numbers at training through Sigerson or through under 20 or through other competitions, numbers at training were limited, and he wasn't getting to work with the same men that he was then picking at the weekends. He worked through the National League the whole time to try and find forwards to give him a plan B so that what happened against Dublin last year wouldn't happen again. By the time the championship started against Monaghan, he had selected Mark Bradley and Lee Brennan as his two men. Having had all the experiments in the league, they were his two men, and they went and both got injured and both taken off in that game, and they're only now returning to play. Since then, he's then reinvented again. He's used Richard Donnelly, who wasn't available during the National League. He's used him as a full forward, and that has worked well at times. Conor McCalliskey found a great vein of form at time, and then he sort of lost it a wee bit again. Richard Donnelly still done well as a target man full forward on Sunday, but he didn't get the scores he would have wanted. So Mickey it is still a work in progress, but having the two men that he put faith in after the National League back certainly is a big bonus. But where Tyrone are at, was it Donegal tailing off? Was it Energy tailing off? Was it Tyrone up in the gears? Was it the subs? We don't really know, but certainly the positivity, the positive way that Tyrone has ended that game is right through all the supporters. We loved what was seen. It was a special final 15-20 minutes. But we still don't know, can they do that from the start, or is it a cagey start that they prefer, or is it the subs that done it? There's so many unknowns at the minute.
Yeah, like the big thing, the big talking point for the weekend has been just the impact of Mickey Harte's bench, and obviously that comes from some of the players you talked about, just having more players and having more competition for places. But to what extent do you feel that there's been a mental shift this year, a progression to the point where they're really believing in the squad mentality?
I think this particular group of players would have had that over a number of years. I've seen huge togetherness whenever they won Ulsters. The whole collective celebration of all the players, they really do all seem to buy in. I always out of interest to just keep an eye on boys that you would have known to have been disappointed not to have been used, and yet when the camera just pans round, you see them celebrating and the big smiles on the faces. So this is a pretty together squad. Not only that, but when a panel knows that it is the panel that makes the difference in a championship match, all of the chat, all of that standard sort of cliched chat, oh, we're a team, it's not about the 15 boys, it's about the whole squad, that actually means something. Everybody can see it. And like Harry Loughearn got in the last day where he wasn't used for a few games, and yet he made the game winning change. So whenever subs realise, well, he wasn't used for a couple of games, but obviously he's still in the manager's thoughts, and he's obviously still trusted to go into the biggest games, that creates a very, very happy camp. And Mickey, yes, there was a couple of wee things last year, but I think they were out of the ordinary. Generally speaking, Mickey has always had them boys completely playing for him, and no more than at the minute.
Before we get to Pat McEnaney to get the view from Monaghan, I just want to play you this. It's the final few moments of the game from Salt Hill as it was relayed on Northern Sound. Commentary here is Sean McCaffrey, Nudie Hughes and Frank Brady.
Blower up Connor through the middle. Desi was screaming for it. Connor had a shot for it.
18 points, 16 points to 8. 8-point lead for Monaghan. Connor Lane looking round him. We're waiting for the long whistle. There's going to be a pitch invasion. Malachy, the team are all surrounded by the supporters here on the sidelines. I see the stewards trying to urge them. It's all over! It's all over! Monaghan, 30 years, 1988. Pitch invasion below us. Oh, it's as good as winning an All-Ireland. There's no trophies today, but there's a bit of history.
Yeah, a bit of history. Pat McEnaney, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, doing good. Yeah, good week to be a Monaghan person. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I realise it's impolite to mention somebody's age, but you're just about old enough to remember what '88 was like. How does this compare?
I suppose I'm a little bit older now, and I've got to experience a few defeats over the years. So it's quite nice to be able to sit back and enjoy the week and. Prepare for next Sunday, and hopefully, I think the special thing about next Sunday is that we have two teams going to Croke Park, so I don't think that's ever happened in the history of Monaghan. So there's a great sense of achievement, there's a great sense of belief, and there's a great sense of pride. I think that's the overriding thing in Monaghan. People in Monaghan, we know that we're not going to be always boxing at the top table, but we've been doing pretty well this past 15, 16 years, and next Sunday could be a special day for us. Yeah, totally. Seamus is the minors as well, so it is a huge day, which means there'll be pretty much everybody from the entire county hopefully showing up to Croke Park as well. How do the players now make sure that they don't get a bit carried away by the fact that you've made history? Because with a small county, winning an Ulster title that first time, there's a bit of a letdown after that. Winning it the second time, you think that maybe the team is ready to kick on. Finally now, it seems like they are ready to kick on. So how do you just make sure, if you're involved in that management setup, that this week you're telling the players, look, try and keep yourselves away from the excitement, but also try and feed off it and get that balance right? Absolutely. I think we've got a few experienced boys in there. You have Collie Walsh, you have the Wiley brothers, you have particularly Vinnie Corey and these lads, Manzi. These boys know that that you don't get many opportunities like this, and they'll be preaching that to the younger players. A big opportunity here for us. I think the way we played against Kerry, I thought that was a big statement. The way we played, we got caught with a sucker punch, and then how we recovered. To go to Galway and win was a big statement, and that experience and that learning curve for the younger players will, I think, help them next Sunday. The win against Galway, I think people are probably underrating it because Galway had already qualified, but it's an away game and it's double scores against a Galway side who are still a really good team who they believe themselves are capable of winning an All-Ireland. Absolutely, and I think people underestimate that, and just listening to Enda there, even Tyrone going to Donegal, was to go to Donegal and win away from home is a massive achievement for Tyrone, and it was a big statement by them as well. And for us, yes, Galway were qualified, and that just little at that level though, if you drop a notch at that, a quarter-final stage, you're always going to get found out, and. Maybe go, but still, I take your point, and I agree with you. And Monaghan were pretty confident. I think after the first one, we all recovered. The supporters and the players recovered after a couple of days. I think there was a sense of belief that we could go to Galway and win, because we went down the National League, and it was a game that I was at, and Galway, I think, maybe led by 3 or 4 points, and we gradually sucked them in, and we were starting to really dominate them when we got Fintan Kelly sent off and the game turned. But up to that point, we looked really strong, and we looked we were going to come away with 2 points. And anybody that was down at that game would have felt we're capable of going to Salt Hill and winning here.
Do you think there's a potential Tyrone estimate Monaghan this weekend, Pat, given what's happened over their most recent meetings in Croke Park?
Sorry, give me that question again.
Do you think there's a potential that Tyrone could underestimate Monaghan given their recent history at Croke Park?
No, Mickey Hart doesn't do that, or Tyrone don't do that with Monaghan. No. We're neighbours' children up there. They know us as well as we know them, and there's no chance of that. No, I think Tyrone. I think I understand. I heard someone talking to bookies. They're slight favourites. It's a. I think Pascal, maybe because someone called it right on Sunday night, I think it's a 50-50 game, and it's there to be won for either team.
Yeah, and just to go back to you, what do you make of the way that Monaghan have kind of blitzed the Super 8s? That they've definitely clearly been, certainly their performances and the results have been of a team who are justifiably in the last 4, and you can make a case that they're actually a more dangerous team than Galway at the moment.
Yeah, if you take Dublin out of the Super 8 or leave them out of the conversation for a wee while, Monaghan have easily been the most impressive team during the Super 8s, and that comes off a National League where they were massively impressive too, obviously getting the win over Dublin and Croke Park in the final day. So Monaghan can take huge credit. The defeat of Kildare in Croke Park was a big win. The performance they put in again Kerry, but just not closing over the line, was probably a huge learning curve. The 2-week break has been absolutely priceless for them. If that was a 1-week break, I think they would have struggled to get over the Kerry defeat still, and Galway wouldn't have just took the eye off the ball, I think, as much with 2 weeks until their semi-final. I think their performance against Galway, the sheer energy and intensity level was so impressive, but Galway weren't at it either, completely understandably from my point of view. So Monaghan have been massively impressive. They beat Tyrone in Blaney, they beat Tyrone in Omagh, they beat Dublin. They have to do with Kerry, but really beaten them and they've beaten Galway to an extent down in Salt Hill. So Monaghan have very little left to prove, bar the big one, beating a big team in Croke Park, and that will hang over. But just hearing that commentary, as a Tyrone man, puts shivers up my spine, because if them players latch on to that sort of positivity, they can reach a level, and they can just, through sheer momentum, I think they have probably more momentum than what Tyrone has, and if they use that, then they absolutely can do a job in Tyrone on Sunday.
Yeah, no question about that. I did want to ask you about Niall Morgan, because he's going to be a key focus of the preview tactically coming up to the weekend, given the obvious impact of Rory Beggan at the opposite end of the pitch. And we were talking about the Galway hurlers a few moments ago and their ability to be zombie-like in kind of bringing performances out of the bag, even though they haven't been playing that well. And I think huge credit has to go to Niall Morgan this morning after the way he started poorly, gave away a goal clearly in the first half for Michael Murphy to finish to the back of the net, to be so brilliant in the second half. And his kickouts were Beggan-esque at times in that second half, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Even in the first half, before the couple of mistakes, his kickouts were exceptional. He was standing up in the commentary box, and his kickouts were absolutely on point. He hit a few brilliant ones. The short kickout was a gamble, and he was let down by his defender who waited on it, which was just, with the likes of McHugh lurking in the background, you can't afford to do. And then Murphy's finish, he almost actually saved it. It sort of went through his diving arms. He then, the other short one that got threw up for a hot ball, again, there seems to be these quibbles, and sometimes referees are more tuned into that than others. But the way he recovered a number of years ago, Niall Morgan had a complete meltdown up in Ballybuffet, and I think he showed how much he has matured yesterday in that, and scoring that final point. The one wee caveat I would say about the final point, Tyrone had won it at that stage. Tyrone, Donegal were broke, so it was sort of like a hero score. There was no real pressure. If that was all square, if Tyrone were point down, then it's different. But still, the way he scored it, the big smile on his face when he came back, and no theatricals, no silly stuff, just a player absolutely beaming for having scored the point he did. And as I say, you were absolutely right, his kickouts were a huge part of Tyrone turning the screw and getting on the front foot, because Donegal were a wee bit confused in their tactics, and I think that had a big say in the game. A lot of this game, I suppose, has been painted as Tyrone's power display in the final 15 minutes, but you'd have to query what happened to Donegal at that stage. But certainly Niall Morgan's kickouts were a key factor in switching that game around and getting Tyrone onto the front foot.
We'll come back to that in a minute. I just wanted to ask Pat McEnaney one quick question about why things are going so well in Monaghan and why they have been going so well over the last decade or so. Pat, it's not a coincidence that the minors are also there. It's not a coincidence that this team has been able to regenerate over the last couple of years and bring players through relatively quickly. What do you put the success that Monaghan are enjoying at the moment down to?
I think a number of small things over this past 20 years. I think if our county board structure is quite strong. We some of the previous men I mentioned, I think of fellas like Sean McCaig, who was our county board chairman, went on to be president. Porrick Duffy, of course, was very influential at the early stages of this as well, who went on to be the head of the GAA. So our county board structures were very good. I think our development in Claughan was that was built under the chairmanship of John Connolly, was a massive thing for us as well. It gives us a centre. It gives all our county teams a place to train. I think fellas like Paul Finlay, Vinnie Corey, Owen Lennon, who's now a current selector. Them boys were big players back in the early 2000s under my brother Seamus at the time. Got beaten in a couple of Ulster finals. But I think that team, them era of players, Paul Finlay, them fellas, realised, that it wasn't good enough to be just training on a Monday and Tuesday night, and go drinking on a Friday night. That kind of whole method of playing football back then wasn't going to succeed at the top table. And I think from that day onwards, players realised in Monaghan what it actually takes to be a good county player. And you've got Vinnie Corey there at the moment, you've got Desi Moan, you've got the Wileys, experienced players that knows what it takes to dine at the top table.
And I presume everybody in Monaghan is starting to believe that an All-Ireland final appearance is a realistic thing this year, that this team hasn't come from nowhere, has come through the way that they've come through, has strengthened every line of the pitch. So you must be beginning to dream.
Absolutely. There is absolutely no doubt about that. I think we've been knocking on the top 4 table for a while to get in there. We haven't got in there this past 6 or 7 years. Where we're now in a semi-final, and I think there's a belief in Monaghan that, I think Dublin are at a different level. I've got to be honest and say that. I think that they're at the moment right now they're on their own at a different level. But Monaghan could feel that we can beat anybody else in the country at the moment, and it'd be a massive opportunity if we could get over next Sunday, and then we'll deal with whatever comes.
And then just to go back to that point you were raising about Donegal and their tactics, what did you feel that they did wrong in that last 15-20 minutes?
Well, even before that, in the game itself, broadly, like Donegal this year, Declan Bonner's come out, he said he's wanted to be more attacking. Most of the games we've seen this year, including even when they played against Dublin, they were playing with at least 2 or 3 men up front. Now, yes, they've lost McBrady, but in the game since that, they still seem to be sticking to that general principle. On Sunday, they were the more defensive of the 2 teams. Tyrone were trying to keep 1 or 2 up, either Richard Donnelly, McAlliskey, Bradley. They were always trying to linger up the pitch and not get sucked back in. Donegal were just everybody back. Then in the second half, they seemed to be doing a high press up the pitch, and there was huge space at the back. Whether they didn't have the legs, I don't know, but they certainly were struggling to then follow Tyrone's runners when Tyrone were starting to commit a wee bit more. So there was wee questions over their conditioning. I'm not so sure about that. I think conditioning more than anything is a huge part of mentality whenever you get to that last 15 minutes of a match. But they just seem confused about what they're at, whereas Tyrone have been doing the exact same thing. Even from last year, it has only, as Mickey Hart has said, it's only been wee tweaks. So they're exceptionally solid about what way they're doing. At the minute, that seems to lead to a game plan where we stick, we hold, we keep ourselves in the game, and then we push for home. It's fairly dangerous because even with the way Donegal played, they still had thrown well on the racks after 10-15 minutes that first half. It was 4 points in it. Paddy McGrath had come up from cornerback, scored a great point. Donegal had a couple of other chances. If they had got 5 or 6 in front, Tyrone were in a very difficult place and mightn't have come back at all, and Donegal might have got that added energy. In the end, Oran McNeilis was taken off, Kieran Thompson was taken off pretty strangely, and they put on Paul Brannan as if to look to hold the lead. But Paul Brannan wouldn't have the legs that of the subs that Tyrone were putting on. And then with Donegal doing this high press, Tyrone sort of just broke them once or twice, and then dramatically Donegal's heads dropped. And again, yes, they're a young side, but it's them sort of things. Tactically, they were a wee bit over the place. They weren't sure of themselves, and then their heads dropped at a critical moment in the game, and then Tyrone just steamrolled them from then on.
Does Padraig Hampsey love the sight of anything more than Michael Murphy in the opposition lineup?
Yeah, I think, look, whenever you're playing against a player with a huge reputation, it's almost, and you're a decent player yourself, it's a dream because all the pressure is on him. You know, he has to stand up and be counted. Michael Murphy has to do the dramatic stuff time and time again in that match, and so Hampsey just has to break him and stick with him, and suddenly the pressure's on Murphy. Hampsey done that, and then even got up the pitch himself and got a score. So he's done it a couple of times, but it's very, very difficult for top players in the modern game, especially out around the middle, when you're supposed to be free. You're supposed to get a few metres here and there. You just don't if a man's just sticking to you and taking himself out of the game to mark you. And we've seen that numerous times. Players have really struggled. I don't know why somebody hasn't tried to defend. I think people have tried to defend, but he hasn't done it. So it is still possible for them big players to count, but certainly Hampsey seems to have Murphy's measure, and that's a huge bonus for Tyrone.
If you're Monaghan, then do you look at that performance and that style of play that Tyrone have had, that approach to games, and go, this first 15-20 minutes we absolutely need to blitz them, let's go for goals, let's try and do what we did to Kerry?
To a certain extent, but Monaghan and Tyrone games, including that championship games, they tend to be really cagey. I'm sort of hoping both teams, that sheer level of positivity that both games finished on, I'm hoping both teams will come to Croke Park absolutely full of confidence, and full of confidence in their attacking ability. That's probably the two biggest things for two teams lauded for their defensive systems. The big talking point, the big positivity, the big thing that has got both counties so positive is this attacking displays they put in, and the spread of attacking talent they now have. We've seen McEnaney and Malone doing it for Monaghan, Darren Hughes chipping in with lots of scores. McManus was comparatively quiet. So that's a huge bonus for Monaghan. Tyrone, with Brennan back in, Bradley back in, it suddenly looks we're much more attacking an exciting unit. The ability of them boys to throw defenders, and just the way they play the game, that off-the-cuff nature they play the game, Tyrone supporters love that. It's sort of reminiscent of Muggsy, sort of the way he carries himself on the pitch. So I'm sort of hoping that both teams, with that sheer sort of positivity that they're both coming in with, that they might sort of go at it a wee bit more. I'd be worried that the first half will probably be tense, and then the second half a game of football will turn out. But Monaghan will be more than confident that they can take Tyrone. It's just how deep-seated that belief is whenever the going really starts to get tough.
And great stuff. Enjoy the build-up this week. Thanks a million, and no doubt we'll talk to you again in advance of that match at the weekend. Thanks too to Pat McEnaney for joining us this morning to give us that sense in Monaghan of how things are.
Yeah, it's going to be one hell of a week in Monaghan. How can you possibly shelter the players from that? I don't know, but I've got the feeling that group of players is the sort of group that will kind of embrace all of this, that are really not happy to be there, but realise the achievements that they've already put down this season.
That point that Pat was saying, that the experienced coterie of players will be like, this isn't an everyday occurrence. Yeah. Let's enjoy it, and let's make sure that we get it done at the weekend.
Yeah, and they did win at Croke Park already this season. That sort of idea that they kind of choke when they get to the bright lights at Croke Park has been lessened a little bit this year.
I think that's really important. Like, they weren't brilliant in that game, and they could have thrown it away. Like, it wouldn't, if Kildare had won that game, it wouldn't have been a complete fluke. It would have been like, okay, you can see how that happened. But I think getting that performance out and looking back at that video and going, well, these are the mistakes you made, and this is how you need to be ready for this. Also, I would expect the crowd will be a little bit more intense than they were for the Kildare game?
Something tells me it might be. It doesn't clash with the World Cup. It's an All-Ireland semi-final. It's an Ulster team versus an Ulster team. There is a brutal...
Will there be at least 45,000? I mean, come on. Surely there'll be like 55,000. Surely every single Monaghan person in the world is coming to this game.
It'll be 5,000 Tyrone, 5,000 Monaghan, and then 35,000 Kerry people looking to watch their minors against Monaghan in the first game.
All right. Speaking of Kerry, Eoin Fitzmaurice stepped down after 6 seasons as the Kerry boss this weekend. Here he is speaking with Dave McIntyre.
I know you spent a lot of time in the dressing room there with the lads after the game. Have you stepped down this evening as Kerry manager?
I have, yeah. I stepped down. I've been 6 years in the job, which is a long time. And I think that the lads it'll freshen the thing up. There's a lot of young talent. I think there's good foundations there. I think you always look to try and improve the thing and pass it on to the next person in a better place. So we're in a very good place in Kerry. The future is bright. And I think by me stepping away from it, a new person coming in, they'll be given a bit of space that we weren't given this year. I think in particular in our own county after the Galway game, there was a lot of negativity around the team, and that's okay for me, but it's not great for a young team when you're trying to develop a young team. So I think by removing myself from the situation, even though I still had 2 years to go, it should free up the public opinion and give the lads a bit of space and time to develop, which they need. A lot of those young lads have made absolute massive strides this summer, and they'll be all the better for it, but it takes time before you're ready and before you can win big.
I think Eoin Fitzmaurice was a brilliant Kerry football manager. That team that won in All-Ireland when it looked like they were going to be in the doldrums for the best part of a decade was the hallmark of an absolutely brilliant manager, getting those resources together, just getting the last bit out of a great team and betting in some new firebrand talents that he managed really well. And I think that the criticism of him is largely that he's come up against the greatest Dublin team in the history of Gaelic football, and he gets no allowances for that.
No, it's heart-wrenching. It really is heart-wrenching when you put the whole thing in the context of Dublin. And I'm not for one moment saying that Kerry are in the same ballpark as Dublin, but after that 2016 All-Ireland semi-final, when the heart was ripped out of every Kerry person inside in Croke Park that day to lose that game to Dublin, which was so devastating after they'd rumbled Cluxton a couple of times before half-time, after there was a couple of refereeing decisions. Granted, Dublin probably deserved to win that game in the end, but there was enough to cling on to that day where it was like, we'd love another crack at Dublin, and Fitzmaurice never got to play them again in Championship. They played 3 more times in the league. There was 1 draw, 1 loss, 1 win. That would give me enough hope to suggest that this weekend Kerry might have given Dublin something to think about. Again, I need to point out that I do not think that they're in the same ballpark, but
I'd like to see it though. I'd like to see it.
This attitude from some Kerry supporters that, we'd be better off not playing them at all because we would have got hockey this weekend, makes my blood boil.
No.
Like, that is the one thing that might have brought this team on a little bit more than they would have already done this year, is to get a crack at the Dublin. Granted, they would have lost, but they wouldn't have got hammered. There's no way to guarantee that. There's no way to prove that, and that makes it really frustrating as well, that we will never get to see what might have happened this weekend. And to think that, you know, on that August evening in 2016, when they were so close to beating them, Fitzmaurice would have been told that's the last time he'll ever get to play the Dubs in Championship. He would have been devastated, and I'm sure that's one of the things that's going through his mind now. It's sickening, but that's sport, isn't it? That's the ruthless nature of it all.
Yeah, for sure. We've loads more to bring you. We're going to be talking about the Irishman who looks like he might be on his way home from the US after streaking at a Blue Jays game. That's coming up in a couple of minutes' time. But the Premier League is back this weekend after the Community Shield at the weekend. Daniel Harris is with us this morning. We wanted, essentially, Daniel, to talk at the start of this about the doomsday clock and how it's ticking for José Mourinho. What's your take? What's the general sense of how much longer we're going to have José Mourinho as the manager of Manchester United?
It's really hard to know. I think there are some of the things you would look for in him manufacturing an escape, as in getting annoyed all the time, creating what looks to be a bad atmosphere by complaining all the time, creating aggravation with the board. But at the same time, those are things that you feel kind of need to be done, really. And the players don't necessarily seem to be finding him too much of a problem, in that things that you hear from people that know players and that kind of thing say that people seem to be quite happy inside the squad. But I would say the biggest red flag for me, actually, was how United played against Bayern Munich on Sunday, where they looked absolutely clueless, absolutely devoid of any kind of plan, and seems unlikely that even Mourinho told them to go out there and play like that. It seems unlikely that he would have said to them, "Listen, lads, we need some transfers. Go and camp on the edge of your box for 90 minutes. Don't pass the ball to each other, and then that'll be fine." And I wouldn't really want to get too excited about a pre-season friendly, and would, I guess, frown upon people who do. Except this was so unfathomably bad that it was impossible not to watch it and be concerned if you're bothered about how United are going to do.
A couple of quick things on this. Somewhere in the dusty recesses of my mind, there's a sense that José Mourinho did have a power struggle against an executive at Real Madrid, which ultimately he won, and that gave him a little bit longer at Madrid and gave him access to the players that he wanted before he does actually win a league there. So maybe there's some method to this, and he is in the midst of a power struggle against Ed Woodward, and somehow believes that he'll be the one that comes out the right side of that. And then the other side is that it's hard to know how much he still actually likes being a football manager.
Yeah, for sure, and how much he likes football. I think that it's weird to see Mourinho as any kind of crusader, because Mourinho is not really a crusader for anything but Mourinho. But the underfunding of United, and I know people say, well, United spent this and they've spent that. They've spent a lot less than Manchester City, and that's the team they have to keep. That's the team they have to catch. City won the league last season. United finished second. They finished a distant second. And you can look at the squad and say Mourinho should be getting more out of the squad than he is. But anyone sensible would also look at the squad and say Fred, Dalot and Lee Grant are not, and whichever centre-back arrives, were not the difference between United and City. And in the end, there's a conflict of interest between Mourinho, who wants to win things, and I guess the supporters who want to win things, and Ed Woodward and the Glazers, who want to make as much money as they possibly can. And the amount of money that you have to invest to perhaps then go and win the league is significant, and it's not enough more than the amount of money that you can just claim by constantly finishing in the top four, which United look likely to do. So if you are Ed Woodward and you've got instructions to maximise returns for the Glazers, or if you're the Glazers and all you care about is maximising returns, and we can see that that's all they care about from the other various sports teams that they have, then why would they invest? They invest enough to stay in the top four, because you have to do that to keep the cash machine ticking over. But anything beyond that is a gamble, and not a gamble that's particularly rewarding.
Do Ed Woodward and the Glazers not want to protect their reputation to a certain extent as well? That's as important to them as profit, and in a very subtle way, or maybe a not so subtle way, José Mourinho sort of chiselling away at that a little bit and sort of saying to the supporters, well, here is your Fred, here is your Lee Grant, whatever. These are terrible signings. It's not my fault.
I don't think these people have reputations. When the day that the Glazers bought United, they left in a police van. They've taken all manner of abuse. They don't speak to the supporters. They very rarely turn up at Old Trafford. They're not bothered by what supporters think of them, because if they were, they'd have been gone a long time ago. And unfortunately, they're pretty well insulated from what supporters think, because they're, wherever they are, enjoying their money. And so, no, I don't really think they care at all about their reputation. And I think that you see also, and it's dissimilar but similar, you look at Daniel Levy at Tottenham. Daniel Levy's reputation is about making money for Joe Lewis and Ennick. It's not about what Tottenham win, because they don't win anything. But what they do is they're a well-run club who are making money, who are improving, and that looks good for Daniel Levy. These guys are businessmen. They're not sportsmen. So their success, their sporting glory, is in a profit and loss sheet. It's in a balance sheet. It's in accounts. It's not into delivering value. It's not in what's on the honours board at the club, because that's what players do. That's not what these guys do. And the Glazers bought United because they saw that relative to American sport, United was undervalued. It was this huge worldwide brand. It was undervalued. They saw lots of ways that they could very easily start increasing profit, because they did it in the States. So before the Glazers took over, football clubs would have one sponsor, basically. United was sponsored by Sharp, or whoever it was, Vodafone, I think it probably was at the time. What the Glazers came in and did is they sponsor the seats that the managers sit on. They sponsor the training kit. They have a title with Mr. Potato Head, and all these kinds of things, and it's money and money and money and money. And they saw that no one was exploiting those things in football. And so that's what they came in and did. I guess, I might be wrong, my guess is they probably thought that the TV deal was going to be broken up by then as well, which hasn't happened, but there have been so many other ways of making money, and the foreign market in TV rights has exploded to such unfathomable extent that United is basically a cash machine for them. And United is such a big name that they're able to wear a certain level of deterioration in success. And as long as United are in the top four and giving the pretense of getting close to winning things, then that's still a lot of money that the Glazers can keep making without actually having to take the final step. Whereas if you look at Manchester City, it's different. City is the PR wing of a repressive oil regime. They need to win things. They just need to be getting into the top four because that is something different. Like the people who own City have an entirely different level of money. They're a state. And so what they need to do is they need to win things. They need to spend whatever it takes to win things. And that's what you're seeing from City. And if you look somewhere else, and you look at Chelsea, what Chelsea did is they've got a guy who no one's heard of, but who knows people who keep getting bumped off. So all of a sudden, now people know who Roman Abramovich is. If Roman Abramovich vanishes off the face of the earth, then people are actually going to notice that he's not there, which previously wasn't the case. So Chelsea won things for a bit, but he's now not investing in Chelsea in the way that he was before because he's probably achieved what his primary aim was in owning Chelsea. And what we're actually seeing is the way that our football clubs, these century-old institutions, have been absolutely hammered by people with no interest in football whatsoever. And the FA sat there and did nothing. The Premier League sat there and did nothing. And actually the government sat there and did nothing as well. And we're seeing, I know I'm ranting, but we're seeing what's happening again with Arsenal now, where Alisher Usmanov, who's someone who should never have been allowed anywhere near a football club, is selling out to Stan Kroenke, who's someone who should never have been allowed anywhere near a football club. And what he's going to do is he's going to take Arsenal private, and there's going to be no fan support or shareholders. And again, he's going to be able to do whatever he wants with this franchise, in inverted commas, which is actually the heritage of people's lives. And we're going to see the same thing with Arsenal.
The one counter argument to the Arsenal situation is that actually I think Stan Kroenke is going to invest money in that because he believes the best way of creating value is to make the team an exciting team to watch. If you look at what he's done in LA, he's signed a bunch of the best players and hired the youngest, most exciting coach that was available to him and has tried to put bums on seats because that's what they need to do in LA. They're building a new stadium and it's not a million miles away from the situation that Arsenal are going to find themselves in. I'd be terribly surprised if he just maintains Arsenal at that kind of crappy level that they're at the moment and that actually he tries to go and win because that's the quickest way to close the gap on the amount of money that's being generated by Manchester United.
Well, that's kind of the thing at the moment. That is to start with the first point is when all this kind of thing started happening, there were 4 teams. You just had to be one of them. Now there are 6 teams, so 2 big teams are going to miss out. So in order to be part of that, you do have to spend money in order to get into the Champions League, which is what people need. But what you said about bums on seats, I don't think is quite right now because actually TV revenue is far outstripping bums on seats in terms of what these clubs need. So you might want TV bums on seats, which is slightly different, but then how much is it going to cost to go and watch Arsenal? And it's already expensive to watch Arsenal. And if I was an Arsenal fan, I guess that's the main thing that I'd be worrying about. As a supporter of a football club, so if you go to the games, the main thing you're thinking is, what is my match ticket going to cost? And I would be surprised if that didn't increase now that Kroenke is going to own the entirety of Arsenal, because he's probably also thinking about this American revenue system where you charge insane amounts of money. And I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But I would be surprised if we suddenly saw Stan Kroenke spending Manchester City or even Manchester United levels of money.
I do wonder though, because if you're the Glazers and you've already created the situation where you can milk as much revenue out of the team as you possibly can. At some point, you want to increase the value, and the only way in football really to increase the value and to grow the brand is to win. Surely, the point you made about the brand being so big that they can have a little bit of creep over a period of time where they're not actually winning stuff. It's not that long. You can't go that long without suddenly becoming a sad case like the great Liverpool team who used to win the league and be competitive. Like it took them. It was 2 decades of creep there before actually they've become a team who are credible again. If that was to happen at Manchester United, I don't know if they're going to continue to sell bedspreads in Indonesia.
Well, I don't think it's about the bedspreads in Indonesia anymore. It's about the TV revenue, and that's not going to change. So you might lose some money here and there, but if you said, right, if the Glazers said to José Mourinho, we will give you money to buy every player that you want, would you be certain that United would win the league or the Champions League?
No.
So it's a gamble.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very expensive gamble. And if you're the Glazers, I mean, particularly to bring it back to Mourinho and actually football rather than stuff on balance sheets that, as a football writer, as a football supporter, I don't really feel I should even have to talk about, never mind know about, read about. I mean, it tells you where we are, the fact that we're even having this conversation here. But you would, if you're the Glazers, and I don't want to look at it from their point of view at all, but you do have this notoriously fickle manager who looks like he's starting to move the pieces around to get himself out there. You might be reticent to give him money. And let's say that's the case. If that is the case, then you've got to move. You've got to get rid of him.
Well, so you're exactly right? And so my point, I guess, John W. Henry's a better example of this, where they found a manager who actually can be this totemic, unifying figure and plays a style of football that makes people, the metaphorical bums on seats around the world, go, I want to be a Liverpool fan again. That actually, that's the type of thing, if I was Stan Kroenke or if I was the Glazers, I'd be like, oh, I want some of that. That's the type of manager that I want. That's the kind of club that I want to own.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, I'll ask the same question. Do you think Liverpool are going to win the league or the Champions League under Klopp?
I think they have a chance.
I don't think that they will. Like, unless Guardiola goes somewhere quite quickly, I don't think that will happen. I might be wrong.
They might win the Champions League. There's a it's not ridiculous to think that maybe the next time they're in the Champions League final, their goalkeeper doesn't get concussed.
I don't think that wasn't why they won. That was why they didn't win the Champions League. What I would say about that is, I looked at the odds before that Champions League and I thought there is some money to be had here, because how badly Real Madrid would have to play to get beat by Liverpool. But obviously the goalkeeper did do some stuff, and although I felt that allowed people to divert attention away from the fact that they just got beaten by a far, far superior team with far, far superior players. But Liverpool might win the league under Klopp, they might not, but I don't think that they're going to also, like the money that they spend now, I don't think that money is going to continue. Like, this is the money that he's getting. And then at what point does Klopp become under pressure? If he spends all this money and they don't win anything, I don't know, like, is like jumping around and sound bites going to be enough to prevent him from getting fired?
No.
Like, if you're asking me as a football writer, I would say it should, because if he applied for his own job, would he get it? Yes. And who are you going to get who's better? And I think that is one of the problems that United find as well with Mourinho, that they, like, you have people that don't know anything whatsoever about football who are running the club. So if they decided they wanted to get rid of Mourinho, then who are they going to get? And if you have people that don't know anything about football, they're not going to be, well, there's a really good manager at Aberdeen who's done really well and has broken the old firm in Scotland. Let's go and get him. It'll just be another name, because there's no one who really knows anything about football who's involved with the club. So I think that if I was Ed Woodward, or not if I was Ed Woodward, I would imagine that Ed Woodward would be quite terrified about what would happen if Mourinho left, because he'd be looking at a better the devil you know, and that would be, if Mourinho left United right now, that would be Moyes was a failure, Van Gaal was a failure, that would be Mourinho leaving as a failure. If you're responsible for these failures, then at what point are you yourself a failure, and are you going to be allowed to appoint another person who might be a failure? So there's a lot of ego and a lot of selfish desires and needs that are involved in this whole miserable circle jerk of nonsense. And how it's resolved is very difficult to see, because it's the same idiots making the same idiotic decisions. And so it's really hard to actually know on whose side one should be, because Mourinho should be getting way more out of the players that he's got, and should be creating a better atmosphere around the team. And there are just lots of little things that you see that you think, that doesn't feel quite right. Even something really small, like Antonio Valencia, he accused of having too much holiday, which was quite a funny line. But he's now injured. United don't have a right back. But what's he done? He's playing Matteo Darmian, who is rubbish and who wants to leave. He sent Axel Tuanzebe and Tim Fosu-Mensah on loan. And I understand why he's done that. They're two promising young players. They need to play. But I can't help but wonder if, I mean, you always go back to what would Fergie do in this situation. I feel like I should get it tattooed on my wrist. But would he take one of those two players and coach them and say, okay, I'm going to play Tuanzebe, or I'm going to play Fosu-Mensah at right back. I'm going to coach them or have them be coached, and I'm going to trust them. Squads were much smaller in 98, 99. But when United didn't have a right back, Fergie played Wes Brown. And maybe Wes Brown was a more promising teenager than these two guys, who knows? But I don't really see where playing Matteo Darmian is going to get anyone. And I don't really see where playing Antonio Valencia is going to get anyone either. I mean, a winger who wasn't good enough to play for United when he was a winger is now a fullback who's not good enough to play for United, and he's old. And you see Mourinho making these very conservative decisions, and wonder about where he sees it all going and where does he see his future, because he's not investing particularly in these players apart from Scott McTominay, who is nowhere near the standard of a United player from what we've seen. And Mourinho giving Scott McTominay United's Player of the Year, his Manager's Player of the Year award, seems to be the closest he could get to awarding it to himself. On the other hand, and you can look on the bright side, there is a bright side that you could look on, is that if Fred is good enough, then he's precisely the kind of player that United needed. He's quick, he's strong, he has a very good eye for an early pass, he can run with the ball, and he should be able to join together a midfield that meant when Pogba wasn't there or when Pogba wasn't playing well, United couldn't play through midfield. So it's possible that Fred will make that a lot better and then get more out of Pogba. It's likely that Lukaku will be better next season. There's no way Alexis Sanchez can be as bad as he was, and he's looked really good in pre-season. So there are things, but it's hard to see that those things will be sufficient with a manager who doesn't quite appear to be creating the environment around the squad that you'd like there to be.
Daniel, just before we wrap up, I just wanted to get your take on the transfer window in general, because when it comes to moving forward into the 21st century and beyond, it seems like the Premier League have got a lot right, but it does seem this idea of bringing the transfer window and closing it before the start of the Premier League season is going to be a bit of a disaster. Like the Thibaut Courtois situation just puts this into a microcosm perfectly. The idea that Chelsea might not sign a replacement goalkeeper this week because they don't know if he's going to stay or go, and Real Madrid have got an extra 3 weeks on Chelsea to sign him, and essentially the Premier League have given them a leg down, so to speak, against clubs in La Liga.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to put yourself at a competitive disadvantage to other teams, particularly really like Real Madrid and Barcelona are more or less the only teams that can financially muscle English clubs off their best players. On the other hand, with particularly the Courtois situation, from what you hear, he told Chelsea a long time ago that he wanted to do one. So they've known about this for a long time, and Sarri's decided that he must have this face-to-face meeting with him, and that's why this has taken so long. So I think that at some point, Sarri probably should have thought, this guy's gone, so just get on with it. And it's an interesting situation, actually, Sarri at Chelsea, because we watched Chelsea against City the other day, and obviously City are the best team around, and so it wasn't surprising to see what they did. But watching Chelsea play, you kind of felt like this is a guy who has this particular way of playing that is connected to how he feels about football, which then makes it connected to ego, trying to impose this particular style on a squad that doesn't have the players to wear it, and he's not going to be given the money to buy the players to fit his style. So it felt like it's quite hard to see how that will work for Chelsea this season, because when Conte came in, he tried to play 4-3-3 or whatever it was, and then he thought, well, actually, I'm going to play this way. And at the time, when he first did it, I think people thought, this is how Conte likes to play. He likes to play 3 at the back, so that's what he's going to do. But then you actually watch Chelsea play, and you thought, well, what he's actually done here is he's got David Luiz, he's a liability in a 2, he's played him in a 3, he's getting the most out of a really talented player. He's not got Eden Hazard stuck out on the left wing anymore because he's too good. He needs to be on the ball in the middle of the pitch. And Sarri seems to be devising a way of playing, imposing a way of playing that is going to put his best players, David Luiz, Hazard, even Azpilicueta, into positions that don't suit them. And it's hard to see how that's going to work well for him. But yeah, the Premier League made a mistake, which is the short answer to your original question after I've blabbered for far too long there.
Daniel, great stuff. Enjoy. Thanks a million.
All right, see you again.
Daniel Harris giving us some pre-season thoughts ahead of the Premier League return this weekend.
Yeah, I'm not sure that a Freudian slip that the Premier League has just turned into kind of a Champions League sort of preamble, maybe from. There's only 6 clubs. That's all we're going to be talking about for the rest of the season, isn't it? Unless your boys Everton. Well, I call them your boys, considering you were kind of on their bandwagon last year with Sam Allardyce. Might manage to break the mould, or Burnley managed to break the mould. It's often something that kind of gives an Arsenal fan a little bit of concern after what happened last year.
There might only be 5 teams though. Chelsea might not be a team this year.
Well, I think that's a big leap to make given the manager they've got. He probably has not got anywhere near enough time to turn them into a team that might be able to challenge the top 2 or 3, but I would think that he's a good enough manager to be able to keep them in the top 5. Just a couple of athletics videos.
Yeah, quick.
Because obviously things are underway now on the track in Berlin. Phil Healy and Jean Akpa-Moses were running yesterday in the 100-metre heats. Phil Healy came second in her heat. She's through to today's semi-final. Here she is speaking to the Athletics Ireland. This is on their Twitter page after her run.
Phil Healy, all about that big queue, and you got it done. You came through a strong second 50 metres there in your heat.
Absolutely, box ticked. It was all about coming out for the big qualification spot, and I managed to do that, finishing second. And I'm just looking forward to taking it into the semi tomorrow and onto the rest of the weekend as well.
Yeah, great history here, great stadium, and what's it like competing out there?
It's unreal. Even coming here yesterday just to see the stadium doing a few starts, and like, there's just a great atmosphere. Like, the crowd is small in comparison to what it will be for the next few days, but it's really warm, and didn't notice the wind out there, but no, it's absolutely brilliant, and track is nice and hard as well.
Yeah, brilliant season for Phil Healy continues. Jean Akpa-Moses finished just outside the qualifying times in her heat, but she was pretty happy afterwards. Of course, it's her first time stepping up to senior events, probably one of the biggest events she's taken part in her career, so a bright future once again. And she was also speaking to Athletics Ireland after her heat.
Yeah, I'm really content actually, because I know that I got a really good start and I drove as hard as I could. I got up and I transitioned well, but I think the end let me down a little bit, but I'm not fussed, it's okay. Right.
Yeah, and you were saying to the other journalists out there, the nerves wasn't an issue, you feel at home at this environment. And what do you feel this brings for you? Obviously been to the World Under-20s now, and now you're stepping up where you want to be really as a senior athlete.
I think I'm in a really good place. I feel like after this championship I'm going to know what to work on and build on, so I feel like it will set me up nicely for next year and the coming years to come, so yeah.
Jean Akpa-Moses, we'll see her again later on this week in the 4x100, hopefully. We'll keep you up to date, obviously, across all of our platforms on offtheball.com with what's going on at the Athletics in Berlin. A reminder, OTBAM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Now, a lot has been spoken about letters being sent to GAA players, managers and the like over the last couple of days. Joe McMahon tweeted this last night. You can't really see it on Twitter, so we got him to WhatsApp it to us. I wonder if Eoin Fitzmaurice recognises the writing. A Kerry fan once sent one to me. I must say it was quite emotional. #fanmail. So I'm going to read you the bits of this that I can actually understand. I don't know what the first bit is. Is it hello Whiskers? Hello Whiskers. You are some thug with your dirty, smelly owl beard and toothless gorilla mouth. What a delightful spectacle in Killarney, and especially after the genuine Kerry reception you got from the crowd. Mickey Hart has a lot to answer for, allowing such thug gouger behaviour. Never forget ye didn't win the 3 famous All-Irelands. Kerry handed them to ye with mistakes.
Only 2008.
Good that you're gone now for a long time and no loss. Mr. McGuigan was talking shit about two of the games, the players, great gentlemen, Gooch and Declan O'Sullivan. He must have an awful inferiority in capitals complex. Ye have been acting the thug quite long for a long time now. Remember your abuse of Tommy Walsh. You wouldn't PTO. Please turn over. Please do please turn over. Don't effing PTO. But you should really be reading this in your Kerry accent, to be honest. Oh, and that would have been far better.
Please do continue.
You wouldn't lace his boots, you old prick. You blatantly assaulted 5 players in Killarney, the worst being your mean late strike on another genius, Paul Galvin. Ye all breeding thugs in Tyrone, go back to your cave, you old gorilla bollocks. Brackets, disgusted the GAA fan, and in quotation, disgusted GAA fan, and then it's the asterisks was watching you closely, the ref wasn't.
That's just, I'm gonna start crying tears of blood. I don't know, I just feel so kind of demoralised with humanity.
PTO
is certainly the highlight there. That's grim, isn't it? That's just grim. Like the quotation marks there, like who is quoting him to be whatever the disgruntled GAA fan or whatever he is there, who's
Himself.
Himself.
Yeah. It's a voice in his head that he decides to put down on paper, and how he managed to get the letter. I mean, obviously, the post service in the north. I don't know what was it like? What was the moniker he sent it to? Whiskers, Tyrone.
Is there like an inside agent of Kerry GAA working in the postal service in
Just
Northern Ireland?
To hand deliver it. I wonder, was there a postmark? Thanks to Joe McMahon for sharing that letter with us. And I think that the only thing to do with these people is to laugh as opposed to cry tears of blood. I think there is something wrong, not quite right, upstairs with people who commit that type of stuff to print and then get an envelope and lick it and lick the stamp and go down to the post office and post it.
No, the people who write those letters are definitely the type of person that has like that wet sponge that one Mrs. Bouquet used to have in Keeping Up Appearances. She used to like put the stamp on and put it on. I would suggest that person definitely has that. Horrendous handwriting, by the way. Get that checked out.
Irish sports fans have been covering themselves in glory over the last 24 hours. Here we are with a streaker in Canada at the Blue Jays game against the Seattle Mariners. So
Ireland.
Yeah. Oh, he's going to get creamed. Oh, they got him eventually. Do they batter you with a baseball bat? Is that style of stuff? So this is a different angle. There you go. Oh, that was a hard enough foul tackle.
It's a free. You should be made to stand on first base, and the closer throws a pitch.
Oh, there's the guy. There he is. Yeah. Oh, or is it three? It's all the same guy.
Shane Ross should make a public announcement and say, I will be giving €1.5 million, some of it which will go to streaking expenses next time in Vancouver. There he is.
He's got to get deported. I didn't realise Vancouver. I mean, come on. Surely Varadkar can email his buddy with the socks and get him to... Ran into friends at the streak outside of Safeco. They showed us his clothes. He decided to streak on the spot. He and his friends visiting from Ireland. Friend said they're starting a GoFundMe page to help bail him out. Oh, I don't think we should be contributing to that.
Who were you giving your coinage to this week? Tony McGregor or Irish streaker?
According to my source with the King County Sheriff's Office, last night's streaker is still incarcerated. Ooh, since he's an Irish national, he could now be deported. Charges are very serious. All this, I'm told, because his buddies bet him $80. Oh, you clown. 80 quid.
It'll be worth it for, buying a couple of Starbucks coffees on the way home while you're waiting for it to be transferred over to wherever it is that they deport you from in Canada.
I presume they don't fly for nothing, do they?
You got to pay for your own deport. Well, just say you're broke. Just say, I didn't actually get the 80 quid off my mates.
We'll stick you in prison until you pay for it.
At least he gets to extend his stay in Canada a little bit more. He can get his the latest scores from the MLB fans of the Blue Jays.
High security?
High security prison. It's like, we've got a streaker in the prison now. It's a remarkable achievement to him and to all his friends. So fair play for that bet. And
if anybody knows him, please do, by the way, get in touch and we can laugh at you even more. All right. If you haven't seen it yet, you should head over to our YouTube channel and check out our brilliant interview last week from Andy Lee and Seamus McDonough. Seamus McDonough's story is absolutely amazing, and Andy got the best out of him there. So I'm going to play a clip of McDonough in a second, but we do have another brilliant Andy Lee piece coming up. It's with the actor, director, filmmaker Paddy Considine, speaking with Eoin and Andy Lee. So the movie was one of Andy's top 5 boxing movies.
Yeah, Journeyman.
And it is available in Ireland soon.
Yes, it's
just gone to DVD.
Yeah, available on iTunes and Amazon as well. If you're not getting the physical copy,
we'll have an exclusive interview with that tomorrow. We will also have another exclusive interview tomorrow. We'll tell you about it in the morning. But here is Seamus McDonough on the troubles that he experienced in the ring. We'll see you tomorrow. Good luck.
You do get memory loss, I've had in my last fight, I got badly beaten. I got a headbutt in the second round. I fought in a blackout for 7 or 8 rounds. I wasn't even aware that the fight was going on. I wasn't conscious. So I got battered for that. And I got some. That was like a TBI, traumatic brain injury for that in that fight, and it affected me for years. Still affects me somewhat, So, I've forgotten the question again.
No regrets.
Not really. No. I mean. Of course, I wish I'd made more money, but I know a lot of very wealthy people, and money doesn't fix anybody either, And but I have to say that I'm like happy, you know what I mean? Yeah. And people kind of would ask me like, what do you do? You know, and all I can say really is that for the last 22 years I've been sober, and some lad in San Francisco showed me how to, because everyone has problems, you know, and this is not a therapy course here or anything, you know, but everyone has problems, but how to deal with the problems. And I do a writing and meditation practice. I've done it every morning for 22 and a half years. I did it this morning. And it helps your brain, which is not trained to deal with this world, you know. It helps you deal with all your problems. And then when you're free of problems, you can be creative and try things you want to do and do anything you want, really.
You don't have to, but can you reveal to us what you write down? Is there like a mantra, or is it more personal?
No, I can reveal. It's probably never been revealed before on TV, but we'll see. The meditation, I do a meditation called transcendental meditation. Works for some people and doesn't work for others, you know. But it worked for me, and it was a great. It's amazing. So before that, I write down basically my resentments. So when I don't get what I want, I get resentful, like a kid. We're all like big kids actually, running around, you know, and some more than others, you know. So when I drank, all my fears were anesthetized, and it felt great. That's why people drink, because it anesthetizes their fears. But if you write down your fear, say, I have fear, like before the morning, before this interview, I had fear I won't be able to find the gym, Carl Grady's gym, and then I have fear I always have fear I'll crash the car. I'll get on the plane. I fear the plane will crash, because I have negative thinking. You know, it's kind of like the alcoholic way. You know, we always have negative thinking, and they're not real. But if you write them down, they start to dissipate and they don't bother you as much. So I write them all down, but I write down the resentments first. When I want to get resentful, I used to always be resentful at my dad, because the great guy, you know, he had 8 kids. He had a tough life. His father went to America when he was very young and was away, and when there was 5 kids, and his mother passed away, had a heart attack in the kitchen, just like Dancing at Lunasa, that movie, kind of like the same thing. And they were left with our mother or father for a long time, and his father came back and brought him to England, and as a young fella, and so he had a rough life, you know, and so you cannot pass on what you haven't got. So he had a rough life. So his thing was boxing, you know, and so I'd be resentful at my dad. So I'd be resentful at my dad because I fear he made me box. But the most important thing is to find out what the fears are, you know. Write them down, and then I'd write down, as I said before, the fears with no resentment attached. Like I'd write down, I fear I'll run out of money. I fear I'll be late for the interview with Andy Lee. It's all this stuff, you know. So you empty your brain out, and you keep writing. You think when you start doing it first, I'll never stop. But if you keep doing it, then you say, just write them all down, and then I close my eyes and I meditate. And the feeling is as good as drinking when drinking was at its best. And that, I'm not going to lie about that.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
OTB AM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.